Happy New Year, everyone! Dishonored is my favorite gaming franchise of all time for several reasons, not least of which are the interesting characters you both encounter and take direct control of. This will be the first in a series of videos focusing on the Dishonored series, which I will be covering throughout the following months. So without further ado, let's get started with number 5. While he may find himself at the bottom of my personal list, the single most mysterious and enigmatic character in the Dishonored universe absolutely deserves a spot on this list, due in no small part to the fantastic vocal talents of both Billy Lush and Robin Lord Taylor. The Outsider is a character that truly exemplifies the dark secrets of the Empire of the Isles. Drawing from Lovecraftian mythology, Arcane Studios crafted a character that, despite having no discernible motives or backstory, connected with a large chunk of the Dishonored fanbase. It was only after the release of Death of the Outsider that we learned the truth about the character's origins, and they were horrifying to say the least, making the final decision to either kill or spare him one of, if not the, most morally challenging dilemmas in the entire series. While Death of the Outsider's conclusion leaves many questions, the Outsider's presence will still no doubt be felt in future chapters of the Dishonored franchise. The child of Jessamine Caldwin and Corvo Attano grew from a frightened child into a fierce warrior and diplomat in her own right, even if it took seeing the plight of Karnaka's people to show her how important her role is in making life better for everyone. That journey that plays out across the campaign of Dishonored 2 is what lands Emily Caldwin on this list at number 4. Her naive views of the world outside the palace walls separate her story from Corvo's in a fascinating way, as she doesn't carry the same emotional trauma that Corvo does once she travels to Serkonos, but her experiences in the Jewel of the South are what make her a compelling character, let alone one that you can take control of with some of the coolest powers in the series to date. Originally a side character in The Knife of Dunwall and the Brigmore Witches, Billy Lurk has to be the one character in the series that has had the most fascinating and depressing character arc. The DLC from the original game gave us a small taste of her background and history, but her roles in both Dishonored 2 and Death of the Outsider allowed her character to truly shine bright. Clawing her way up from the blood and filth, only to be consistently trampled on, makes her worldview fitting for a society as corrupt as the one pictured in the games. She's lived her whole life with guilt and regrets, which makes her story in Dishonored 2 that much more important. She finally has a chance to ask for forgiveness and face the sins of the past by interacting with either Emily or Corvo, a chance that she takes knowing that she caused immeasurable pain to both of them and forever changing the Isles. Death of the Outsider sees her reunite with her old mentor and father figure Dowd, who seeks to remove the Outsider from play to prevent future catastrophe like the assassination of Jessamine Caldwin, the ascension of Delilah Copperspoon, and so forth. Whatever choice Billy makes is up to the player in the end, but she will continue to play a very important part in Dishonored's future, which is why she lands at number 3. Yes, Corvo Attano is on my list, duh, but he's not number 1? What the hell? Slow down. I'll get to that eventually. For now, let me talk about why the Royal Protector is at the number 2 spot on my list. Corvo has experienced so much over a frankly very small span of time. Over half of his life has been filled to the brim with hardship, from the death of his father and disappearance of his sister to the death of his one true love, his subsequent incarceration, and the loss of his daughter's innocence. All of these would drive a weak man to the brink of insanity, but Corvo has an iron will that is unmatched by anyone in the Empire. He seeks vengeance against those who wronged him, but is also capable of great compassion and understanding toward the downtrodden. Of course, all of that largely depends on how you decide to play Corvo Attano, but in the end, he will go down as one of my favorite video game protagonists of all time. There's a reason his mask strikes fear into the hearts of enemies, and why it is directly associated with the series as a whole. Corvo is Dishonored. He was the one who started it all, and will be remembered as the most fearsome man in the Isles. Well, by most fearsome, I really mean second only to the character in the number 1 slot. With Corvo in the number 2 slot, you had to have seen this coming. His name was once a faint whisper, heard only in the darkest corners of Dunwall. His blade single-handedly changed the Empire for decades to come. His actions rippled across the Dishonored universe like a wave. Daud, the Knife of Dunwall, is my favorite character in the Dishonored universe, and he earns the number 1 spot on my list. Daud's journey through the original game shows us a grizzled and cynical man who has been hunting nobles and aristocrats for years prior to the opening of Dishonored. But when his blade pierces Jessamine Caldwin's heart, he finally discovers just how different murdering a monarch is compared to his countless assassinations of the past. He was a killer for hire, but after pulling young Emily away from her dying mother and grieving father, he became filled with immense guilt over his actions, which would go on to cause the deaths of many more innocents as the Lord Regent rose to power. Desperate for redemption, he goes on one of the best redemption arcs for a character I've seen. The Outsider approaches him and gives him the name Delilah, leading him to the leader of the Brigmore Witch Coven, Delilah Copperspoon herself. Her ultimate plan? To possess the body of young Emily Caldwin and seize the throne without anyone ever knowing the truth. Daud had caused the young Empress enough pain and heartbreak, so he set out to stop Delilah and succeeded in thwarting her plans, even if it was temporary. He then flees Dunwall after his deathly encounter with the vengeful Lord Protector, who, despite his anguish and anger, decides to let Daud live out the rest of his days, wishing he could take it all back. Daud then goes on a 15-year journey of self-discovery, finally realizing that the Void and its omnipotent spokesman are largely responsible for the chaos and havoc surrounding the Isles. He projects his fears, his regrets, and his anger onto the Outsider, who he then sets out to rid the world of. Ultimately, the task falls to Billy Lurk, but when she tells Daud the truth about the Outsider and his origins, he finally lets go of all of his pent-up emotion and frees the Outsider from the Void's grasp. He thanks Billy for opening his eyes and fades into the great nothing beyond. Daud's character arc was the one that I hooked onto almost immediately, because while he starts as a villain, he ultimately ends up becoming an anti-hero, which is one of the most fascinating character archetypes to me personally. Someone who does things so unspeakable and yet goes on to understand that they are not truly lost. They can still find their way back to the light, even if they stumble along the way. It also helps that he reminds me of one of my favorite comic book characters in the best ways imaginable. While I still feel that the old Knife deserved far more screen time than he got, ultimately I'm happy with where his story went in the end. I still have yet to read The Return of Daud, but I'm sure that it provides even more reasons as to why he is my favorite character in the Dishonored universe. Well, that's it. Those are my top 5 favorite characters in the Dishonored franchise and why I love them, but now I want to know what your favorite characters are. Give me your lists in the comments down below, and don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, and be sure to ring the notification bell so you never miss a video. And remember that the Outsider walks among us. Thanks for watching.